Hey, it's Brett here. It's Tuesday night right now, and I figured I had a lot of questions, I guess, on like, what's my thoughts on this whole COVID-19 deal, and is kind of how does this all play into, from a health standpoint, to an economic side of things, to a mental health side of stuff as well too. And I kind of have a different perspective because I'm in healthcare and I'm also a business owner, and I'm very fascinated in like people's psychosocial behaviors, especially in times of crisis. It's interesting how people behave, and this has been the biggest, largest social experiment, psychosocial experiment I've ever been part of. So it's been interesting to watch that. But I guess to start, is this thing a threat? Yes, it is a threat. I do believe there's legitimacy to this. This is not some conspiracy by the government or political parties or China or whatever. It is what it is. It's going to kill people. Yes, it's going to kill people. Secondary to that, has this been something that the emotions wrapped around it? Has it created something beyond what it is? My opinion, yes. I think you take away the media, social media, things like that, this all of a sudden is a completely different animal at that point in time. It doesn't feed that addiction to fear that Americans have so much. That's a pivotal thing and a critical thing to understand with this. With that, looking at statistics right now, statistics have to be large pockets of information to really provide you valid information. Right now, we don't have that. We're looking at statistics from a lot of different countries, from a lot of different parts of the world, from a lot of different demographics and geographic locations that have very different makeups. And I think because of that, it's hard to compare apples to apples, as well as from a reporting system, a testing system, things like that. It's really hard to form a real solid hypothesis and theory and some factual information and direction from this because of that. That's part of the reason why, like I said, I don't blame politicians right now. I don't blame our healthcare system in terms of the decisions that are made. No one knows. That's the trick with this thing. Should we be vigilant with protecting ourselves? Heck yeah. Should we go hide in a box over in a corner and not come out for 3 months? Heck no. There's somewhere in the middle. You got to find yourself on that spectrum on there. I think when it's all said and done, we're going to realize the overreaction to this. And this is where I'm going to kind of lead into the overreaction to this to some degree. And again, facts have not been laid out there, but the overreaction is going to have a much more significant impact from an economic standpoint and a mental health state of our entire country. And that's kind of what I look at as a secondary thing here to really understand is like, what is this thing created? Rather than just a virus that's quote unquote killed X amount of people, what has it created? It's created an exposure of our true health in our country. Lifestyle related diseases and illnesses that predispose people to a high risk factor with this is why we have huge concern with that. If you fall into one of those categories, that in itself makes you way more at risk and way more cautious, or you should be a lot more cautious in regards to how you deal with this. They're lifestyle choices. They're things that people did or didn't do that caused them to be put into that category. Age is one other thing, but even with that, age without comorbidities in this, in other words, other disease factors and things like that, those people have a way less chance of dying from things like this. So understand that. After this, we need to focus on how do we increase the general health of people. If we put this much energy that we put into COVID-19 into preventative health care and measures and actions and incentives to get people to take better care of themselves, there's a lot of psychological pieces with this. But that in itself, the next time one of these things happens, which it will, is going to greatly decrease the risk factors to a lot of people as well as to our country and our economy and things like that. Lastly, exactly what I just mentioned there, our economy and the psychosocial effects with this from hopelessness to despair that people get from this. Mark my words right now, on average, on a consistent basis, on a yearly basis, there's roughly 1 million people that take their own lives, 1 million suicides in the United States. We are going to see an uptick in suicides due to the fact that these situations like this put people in a state of despair. Not just from the economic things, but also the fear that gets created that stays for a long time. The anxiety, it's an uncomfortable state for people. And without proper mental health and with the improper ways of dealing with this, the larger ramifications of this become a much more likely scenario. And I think that's the part that concerns me more than anything. We got to get back on track so that way the mental health side of stuff, the fallout on the backside of this does not put people in a state where now all of a sudden we're counting a death ticker of the amount of people who commit suicide in this country, the amount of people on psychotropic drugs that increase. The amount of families that get broken up, the amount of businesses that fall apart and dreams destroyed from this. That's the big problem with this thing over a period of time. The virus will go away. It's a normal process that environments take on over a course of time. we have ways to combat this. And at the end of the day, this has to run its course. But more importantly, we need to learn something from this so that way the next time this happens, and that way the next time adversity takes place in our country, we take the right steps that are logical, not just emotionally driven. So whether you believe in this or that with the whole thing, understand this. There's not just what's going on right now. We got to keep focused on what happens ahead of this thing, and that's really kind of where my thoughts lie at this point. So hopefully this gives you a little perspective outside the box of maybe what you've been thinking or what you've been focusing on, what you've been hearing. Is this a legit thing? Yes, it is. Has it been hyped, overhyped to some degree? Yes, but I also think we need to be cautious with how this thing works, and the data is going to continue to tell the story. But more importantly, after the fact, we need to focus on, like I said, how do we get more people away from being a risk factor in itself, and the next thing happens, as well as two, how do we start to protect the mental health of people and get people back on the right track? So hopefully this is informative.